Welcome back to MTG Burgeoning, your channel for all things magic. It's Friday, so that can only mean one thing. It's the Kitchen Table series, and here we are with deck tech number 48, and we're going with Mono Black Dark Depths. Hello, welcome, and what is up, MTGBC, baby? Here we are, the Kitchen Table Series, deck tech number 48. We are just a few decks remaining from number 50 in MTG Burgeoning's longest running content series. So, let's get right down to deck tech number 48, Mono Black Dark Depths. Let's start as we normally do here during the Kitchen Table series with our mana base. And, well, it's not going to be too exciting for the first few moments as we show a huge stack of just regular, plain old basic swamps. But there's a lot of them, 2, 3, 4, 5, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18 basic swamps that will make up the bulk of the lands in this mono black deck. So we did mention something about this being mono black dark depths. So let's segue right to an entire playset of this wonderful legendary snowland from Cold Snap. Dark Depths comes into play with 10 ice counters on it. We can tap 3 to remove an ice counter from Dark Depths, although I think we may have some other ways to not have to worry about the ice counters. Because when Dark Depths has no ice counters on it, we sacrifice it, and when we do, we put an indestructible legendary 2020 black avatar creature token with flying named Merit Lodge into play. Turn her sideways and the opponent without any blockers in the air or any removal or protection of any kind, well, that opponent is shuffling up and waiting for the next game. 4 copies of Dark Depths. Now, we mentioned how we may not have to always worry about tapping 3 to remove an ice counter from Dark Depths. We don't really want to invest 30 mana into removing the ice counters in that way. So, here are some lands that may be able to help us, circumvent that particular ability. Let's try one with Vesuva. When Vesuva comes into play, we may choose a land in play. If we do, Vesuva comes into play tapped as a copy of the chosen land. So with a Dark Depths in play, we play Vesuva. We name Dark Depths as the land that Vesuva comes into play as, and because counters do not transfer over when we are copying spells, Vesuva comes into play as a Dark Depths with no ice counters on it. Then we get to sacrifice Vesuva, and again we put into play a 2020 indestructible flying Merit Lodge token waiting to attack our first opponent. 2 copies of Vesuva. And the next couple of lands that we're going to put into play are going to be something very similar to what Vesuva does, just from a different kind of an ability. That's going to be Thespian Stage. Gives us a colorless mana, but we can tap 2 and tap Thespian Stage, and it becomes copy of target land, except it has this ability. So with a Dark Depths in play, we tap 2, we tap the Thespian Stage, it becomes a copy of Dark Depths. Dark Depths sees that it doesn't have any ice counters on it, so we can sacrifice it and again put into play a 2020 indestructible flying creature named Merit Lodge. And those are the lands that are going to be in this deck. We have a total of 26 lands, 18 basic swamps, 4 copies of Dark Depths, 2 Vesuvas, which will become Dark Depths, and 2 Thespian Stages, which will become Dark Depths. We're playing mono black and we want to get ahead of our opponents. So although the lands for this deck have been discussed, we're not done with our mana. It's the kitchen table, so we're going to include a full playset of Dark Ritual. 4 copies going in Dark Ritual. All right, so we showed some lands that can help us get Merit Lodge into play rather quickly. What if we show some creatures that could do that as well? How about an entire playset of Vampire Hexmage? 2 black for a 2/1 first striker. We sacrifice Vampire Hexmage to remove all counters from target permanent. We sacrifice her to the Dark Depths. We remove all ice counters from Dark Depths. And there you have it, folks. We have a 2020 Flying Indestructible Merit Lodge token. 4 copies of Vampire Hexmage because we can't play with 12. All right, no, we're going to put this one right in the middle because these are the important cards that we need to have. Not covering up Dark Depths, though. All right, so with our primary win condition being a one-shot from Merit Lodge, we need to make sure that we can get rid of any creatures that might be in the way. So we are packed to the brim, filled with removal spells. Let's begin with 2 copies of Disfigure. It's an instant for 1 black mana. Target creature gets -2/-2 till end of turn. You think your Birds of Paradise is going to block Merit Lodge? I think you're going to look like that guy's face. 2 copies of Disfigure. Next up, we are going to play with an entire playset of Doomblade. 1 and a black, again at instant speed, destroy target non-black creature. At times, this could be a little tricky because if we're playing against another mono-black deck, they may have some flyers that are black that Doomblade can do nothing about. We'll take our chances because we also have other removal spells in the 60-card deck. 4 copies of Doomblade. Next up, we are going to play with another full playset of an instant removal spell, but this time it's double black, and it's going to be Geth's Verdict. Target player sacrifices a creature and loses 1 life, and that's all at instant speed, so we know if they have a blocker that's flying that maybe Doomblade can't touch or Disfigure can't kill, Geth's Verdict can make them sacrifice it. 4 copies of Geth's Verdict. Next up, we're going to move on to 1 singular copy of Vraska's Contempt. This is an instant for 2 and 2 black. We exile target creature or planeswalker, and we gain 2 life. All right, so I seem to recall that one of the abilities that Merit Lodge had, other than flying, was, what was it? Oh, that's right, it was Indestructible. So if we have an indestructible creature on our side of the battlefield and a bunch of other creatures that our opponents are trying to win the game with, what if we cast Damnation, clearing the board and allowing Merit Lodge to fly over and knock out any opponent she sees fit? 1 copy of Damnation, only because I don't have 3 more. As another board wipe that will have minimal effect on a Merit Lodge token, we're going to include a copy of Languish. 2 and 2 black, at sorcery speed, of course, all creatures get -4/-4 until end of turn. Now, admittedly, this may not clear the board of all creatures, and if it does not set up Merit Lodge for a one-shot of our opponent if our opponent has more than 16 life. However, like I said earlier, Languish is here because I need more Damnations. All right, last 2 removal spells. 1 copy of Corrupt. Now, this could act as a potential alternate win condition if we have enough swamps in play and Merit Lodge is swinging in and maybe our opponent's playing a life gain deck and they're at 24 life or 23. Well, Corrupt says it deals damage equal to any target. It deals damage to any target equal to the number of swamps we control. So we tap 6. Hopefully we're dealing at least 6 damage. And we gain life equal to the damage dealt that way. Another, well, do we want to call this board wipe? Well, I suppose it could be, depending on what our opponents have. Well, let's just talk about Massacre Worm. 3 and triple black for a 6/5 worm. When it ETBs, creatures our opponents control get -2/-2 until end of turn. Whenever a creature an opponent controls is put into a graveyard from the battlefield, that player loses 2 life. So if we can get the Massacre Worm in play, and maybe we're having some trouble with our Dark Depths or our Merit Lodges keep getting exiled or bounced, then the Massacre Worm could go into play, and with all of our various removal spells, the Massacre Worm could end up being a potential win condition. All right, we are down to just a few more cards in the deck. The next subset of cards are just some that we're including to help strengthen the overall theme of the deck. One being some recursion, because if we're sacrificing Vampire Hexmage in order to take off the ice counters of Dark Depths, we're going to want to recur her for future sacrifices. And one of the best ways to do that is with Unearth. It's 1 black mana, and we return target creature card with converted mana cost 3 or less from our graveyard right to the battlefield. Vampire Hexmage, you have a CMC of 2. So Unearth right from the graveyard, right into play, sacrificing for another Merit Lodge token. The best part about Unearth, if we don't need to do that, it's not a dead card sitting in our hand. We can cycle this away for 2, and then draw a card. 2 copies of Unearth. Next, we're going to include a couple of tutors. No, they're not vampiric and they're not demonic. We're going to have 1 copy of Beseech the Queen. For the purposes of this deck, this is a sorcery that will cost us 3 black mana. And what we can do is we can search our library for a card with converted mana cost less than or equal to the number of lands we control, reveal it, and put that card into our hand. So in some ways, a turn 1... Now, if you think about this, follow the logic here. Turn 1 swamp into Dark Ritual, into Beseech the Queen, will allow us to search our library to get a Dark Depths and put it into our hand. Actually, does that work? Yes, it does. Because the lands have 0 CMC, so if we don't have a Dark Depths in our hand, Beseech the Queen will allow us to search one out if, that's just one scenario on turn 1. Okay, but, there might be other things that we want to tutor for other than a Dark Depths. Maybe we need a Vampire Hexmage. Another tutor spell that's not Vampiric Tutor or Demonic Tutor, or even for this deck, Diabolic Intents, we're going to just include, Diabolic Tutor. And it's not a Demonic Tutor, it's not Vampiric Tutor. 2 and 2 black, any card in our hand, any card from our library right into our hand. So yeah, the tutors aren't the greatest, but the Beseech the Queen, let's not sleep on Beseech the Queen. Alternate win condition here, 1 copy of Exquisite Blood. 4 and a black, this enchantment reads, whenever an opponent loses life, we gain that much life. So we cast Exquisite Blood, we send Merit Lodge in the sky, opponent takes 20, we gain 20. So you can see that what we have set up is pretty much slanted toward a Merit Lodge victory, with the potential of, a little Massacre Worm or Corrupt side win conditions. There is one more set of cards. It's actually 6 total cards that I want to include in this deck just to have for another potential win condition. Because, unfortunately, opponents could become privy to what's going on here, and if you play with a deck like this very frequently during your meta, there are a lot of ways in which to land destruction that could really be troublesome for this kind of deck. So let's also include a full playset of one of my favorite creatures, the Demigod of Revenge. It has 5 hybrid Rakdos mana. Of course, for the purposes of this deck, it will just be 5 black mana. It's a 5/4 flying haste that reads, when we cast Demigod of Revenge, return all cards named Demigod of Revenge from your graveyard to play. 4 copies of this card, and why this is important I'm about to show. So 4 copies of Demigod of Revenge. The last 2 cards in this deck are going to be 2 copies of Buried Alive. 2 and a black, search our library for up to 3 creature cards and put them into our graveyard. Shuffle your library afterwards. So if you can see where we're going with this, 1 Buried Alive puts 3 Demigod of Revenges into the graveyard. We cast 1, the other 3 come into play, all 4 of them have haste, we swing for 20 points of damage. Earlier, when we were talking about turn 1 play with our Dark Ritual, a turn 1 Dark Ritual into a Buried Alive, putting 3 Demigods of Revenge into our graveyard, and hey, maybe we cast another one the next turn, or 2 turns, or 5 turns later. we're getting 3 more copies right into play. So as an alternate win condition, we have the Buried Alive and Demigod of Revenge combination. And there you have it, MTG This is the Kitchen Table Series, deck tech number 48, Mono Black Dark Depths. What do you think? Do you run a Dark Depths deck? Let me know in the comment section below. This is MTG Burgeoning, your channel for all things Magic.